Hello, my name's Jamin Bull, Head of Department for Humanities at Wellington Point State High School, and welcome to our subject talks on senior humanities subjects. I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys all about what different subjects we offer in the senior school, both general and applied, so that you can make best informed decisions around what you'd like to study as your suite of senior subjects at Wellington Point High. Humanities is one of the largest faculties at Wellington Point High. We offer a range of subjects that you can choose from. Actually, we offer 6 in total, 4 general subjects and 2 applied. I'll talk about the differences in a moment. But there are some commonalities between all of the different subjects we offer. They all are geared towards students who are interested in the world we live in, whether it's historically or the way the world functions now. What we like to do is offer you key skills that enable you to do things like research information, think about it critically, and then apply that to key questions that you might have to respond to. This is absolutely essential practice at university. We deeply prepare our students for what it's going to be like in tertiary education. We also want our students to graduate Wellington Point High really understanding the influences that have shaped our world today, whether it's historical forces and decisions and events or people, or whether it's the functioning of our society now, or whether it's processes globally, for example, things like geographical processes like climate change and the impacts those have on our world. Humanities is all about being able to think about our world and act as global citizens once we have a good understanding of how things are shaped. So you might have deep questions like, just how did someone like President Trump get elected? They're the sort of the questions that you grapple with in our subjects. And when you leave senior school, you're able to have a great understanding of those kind of things. So we also very much want our students to graduate valuing our relationship with the environment as humans, so that we're able to better manage the natural environment and also the built environment. And of course, we like our students to have a good understanding of the government and legal systems and processes and our rights as people, so that when you enter the world as adults in a couple of years' time, you'll be able to do things like vote with confidence in our elections. Humanities is all about preparing students to be active and informed, ethical global citizens. Before we look in at the senior options for humanities at Wellington Point High, let's zoom back a little bit and talk about your 4-year journey in junior humanities. You began in year 7 by looking at ancient history, ancient Egypt and ancient China, before then focusing in on geography, water in the world, and things like place and livability. You also touched on Australian democracy and the way the government works in our nation, and a little bit of economics and business as well in year 7. Jump to year 8, we fast forward a little bit to look at the medieval world. You, as students, looked at the Middle Ages within Europe, the Black Death. In geography, you looked at the way that nations change in terms of the built environment, landforms and landscapes, and then covering a little bit as well of being an active citizen in terms of Australian democracy and civics and citizenship, and then economics and business again in year 8. In year 9, we focused right in on history, and you did a whole year of modern history, Industrial Revolution, World War I and II, finishing off with rights and freedoms. And now you're in year 10, which is where you've had the opportunity to choose our pre-senior electives to really focus your own education on what you're passionate about. Some of you chose ancient history, some did modern history, we've had geography, legal studies, and then tourism as well. And now you are best placed as students after doing 4 years of humanities to be able to think about which things you've enjoyed the most to choose from our senior subject offerings. I'm sure you've heard this before, but senior subjects at Wellington Point High are split between 2 kinds. Well, there's actually 3 kinds if you include certificates, but I'm just going to talk about general and applied ones today. Now, if you want to go to university, you need to choose a majority of your subjects from general offerings. There are exceptions and you can, do an applied subject or a certificate here and there, but generally you want to choose from the general subjects. For example, in humanities, our four general subjects are ancient history, modern history, legal studies, and geography. Now, these are harder, there's no doubt about it. These are more academically rigorous, they involve quite a bit of research, they have more difficult concepts, but they are there to prepare you for tertiary education at university, and they're also really interesting. We'll get into in a minute all the different things that we teach in these subjects. That's not to say that the applied ones aren't interesting also. They definitely are, but they are a little bit more manageable in terms of academic rigor. In layman's terms, they're easier. So we've got tourism and social and community studies. Unfortunately, we've never offered social and community studies as a pre-senior elective in Year 10, so none of you will have had the chance to do that one yet, but I'll get into in a little bit what that actually means. Okay, so right now you should already be thinking of university pathway or not. And if you're considering university, you want to choose from those general subjects. Of course, there are exceptions, like I said before, but they are the main ones you want to choose from. If you're somebody that's kind of on the fence about it, my recommendation to you would be to still shoot for those general subjects if you're achieving reasonably well, to give it a go, because if you go down that applied pathway to start with just applied subjects, then you are kind of ruling out the option of university entry immediately after school. Okay, first cab off the rank is ancient history. Now, I have to be careful as the head of department not to preference one subject over the other, but you're going to hear right now from a range of teachers, the specialty teachers of these senior subjects, and the reason I'm still talking is because I am mainly trained at a university level in ancient history and modern history as well. I actually teach both of them at the moment in the senior school. But ancient history is the area that I'm probably most experienced in. Now, ancient history is a fascinating area of study. It's rich in wonderful stories of human endeavor, achievement, and disaster. And it is the history of humankind all the way from the very earliest times in our deep past. We even look at prehistory through our archaeology studies, way back in terms of, well, in layman's terms, cavemen times and things like that, all the way from prehistory through to the classical world of ancient Greece and Rome and Egypt, and then the collapse of the Roman Empire and onwards into the Crusades and Middle Ages. We look at the mysteries of the deep past. How did humans live deep in the past, well before we even started writing? What are the origins of our species? What is the deep past stories of our people, stretching back all the way to the classical civilizations of the past? Ancient history, like all other senior subjects, is made up of 4 units, one per semester for 2 years. In Unit 1, Investigating the Ancient Past, it itself is broken up into 2 topics. The first one's called Digging Up the Past, where we do an archaeological exploration into the ancient world. We look at archaeological techniques and practices and apply those to things like ancient corpses and bodies that have been discovered from the past that teach us about the cultures they existed in, even prehistoric ones. And we also do a fascinating case study into an ancient city called Pompeii that was buried by a volcanic eruption. Topic 2, Ancient Societies, Beliefs, Rituals, and Funerary Practices, focuses in on what ancient people believed in terms of religion to try and make sense of the universe, and even their rituals and practices in preparing their dead for their perceived afterlife. We look at ancient Egypt and ancient China in that topic. Unit 2, Personalities in their time. We look at 2 individuals from the ancient world, one per term, 3 and 4. So Xerxes is the first one. And Xerxes was an ancient Persian emperor, a very controversial figure in the ancient world. And if you've seen the movie 300, you'll remember him from that. And Xerxes was a Persian emperor that the Greeks went to war with at the Battle of Thermopylae in the Persian War. The Spartans went to war with Xerxes. And he's a fascinating person to study, to see how he was represented. Topic 4, Alexander the Great. Macedonian Greek individual who by his early 30s conquered the largest empire the world's ever known, and he died very young, and He garnered the epithet of the Great, Alexander the Great, and in this unit we look at whether he deserves that title. Year 12, Unit 3, Reconstructing the Ancient World, we look specifically at two topics. The first one's the medieval crusades, where we look at medieval Christian European campaigns against the Muslims of the Middle East, military campaigns, and to what extent they were justified, why people went on those crusades, etc. Topic 6, 7, and 8 are all focused around a semester-long case study of ancient Rome. We look at the breakdown of the Democratic Republic into being an empire through the actions of Julius Caesar overthrowing the Republic. We look at the earlier emperors of Rome in the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Bunch of nutcases if you ask me, but very very fascinating people to look at. And then of course we wrap things off preparing for the external exam, which is a look into the first Roman emperor, Caesar Augustus. And that is the structure of ancient history in senior school.
I'm Craig Mass, Senior Modern History teacher, and I'm here to talk about the subject of modern history. And our subject's an opportunity for students to engage in a range of interesting subjects and topics that have shaped our modern world. It's also an opportunity for students to really develop their academic writing and research skills as well. We get to look at conflicts that have shaped our modern world. We look at individuals and their causes that have also greatly contributed to the way that our world is today. The subject of modern history is structured in a very similar way to that of ancient history. So over the course of 2 years, we cover 4 units, and each of those units is divided into 2 topics. So students will cover 2 topics per semester. So at the start of year 11 in unit 1, we look at ideas in the modern world, and we focus on the French Revolution, looking at key individuals, the conflict, the ideas that generated this really important time in modern history. In topic 2, we focus on the Russian Revolution, looking at the early 1900s and the emergence of, or the application of, communism as a political ideology. In Unit 2, we move on and we focus on African American civil rights movement, followed by the Australian Indigenous rights movement. 2 topics that are very, very relevant in our current modern context. In Year 12, we start off by looking at Germany, in particular the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party during World War II. Following that, we look at Israel. We look at the emergence of Israel as a state following World War II and the conflict that still currently exists between the Israelis and the Palestinian people all the way up to the early 90s. Our final unit of our senior modern history course, we have a look at the Cold War with a specific focus on propaganda, looking at everything from nuclear weapons, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the use of propaganda to influence people during this entire period. Our final topic is Australia's engagement with Asia, and our current focus on that would be on the Vietnam War, and students will then undertake an external exam as their final assessment of the modern history course.
So in terms of studying history, how will you be assessed? We focus on modes like research tasks, short response exams, and extended response to stimulus exams. I guess in a nutshell, if you're someone who's passionate about research and writing, then these are the subjects for you. We also very much focused on preparing you for tertiary education, in which you'll be doing mainly research tasks and exams anyway at university. So whether or not you're going on to university to study history doesn't matter so much, because we use interesting topics within history merely as vehicles to prepare you to be able to research and write well against any topic. It's the process that counts. So why choose senior history? If you have a passion for the story of humanity, you're fascinated by the mysteries of the deep past and the human story, you love learning about conflict between nations, you want to understand the reasons by some of the biggest developments in history, for example, the collapse of Rome, the Holocaust, 9/11, Black Lives Matter, or you want to understand the reasons behind international relationships between countries today, like our complex relationship with China. All of these reasons are great ones for you guys to study senior history. The processes of studying senior history link in with a huge variety of pathways, both in tertiary and beyond into careers, whether it's journalism, psychology, law, anthropology, archaeology, museum curation, art, architecture, education, tourism, social work, public relations. There are so many options for what to do in the future. I've taught students in the past that have gone on to become archaeologists or ambassadors for the United Nations. And even people that work for the Department of Defense in terms of international relations. So many options. Oh, and of course, teaching as well. Don't forget, you can be a history teacher like us.
Hello, Year 10s. My name is Mrs. Carr, and I am a senior legal studies teacher here at Wellington Point. Basically, I'm just going to be speaking about what legal studies is about and what you'll be doing in it. So guys, legal studies is a great subject for anyone who is really interested in the legal system, from a criminal perspective and even a civil perspective. If you're interested in going into some kind of law, whether it's criminology, whether it's the police, whether it's a lawyer or a solicitor, this is a great subject to do. But it's also for those of you just to know what your rights are and what you can actually do when it comes to the law. It's really, really based in what's going on now in society and gives you some really, really good tips about how to function in society, both legally and socially. When it comes to studying legal studies, we do 4 units, beyond a reasonable doubt, balance of probability, all in grade 11, and then grade 12 is law, governance and changes, and then human rights in a legal context. So basically, we start off by looking at criminal law. Okay, what is against the law, how to get away with a crime if you commit it, and then the punishment options that are available. From there, we move into a civil component. So we're looking at suing people for money. So we look at contracts, who can enter a contract, who can't, what kind of contracts can be entered into. And then we follow on looking at negligence and duty of care. The greatest thing about grade 11 is that it really will be something that plays a huge role in you when you leave school, is about, knowing what laws, what is against the law and what punishments, and then also making sure you know how to enter contracts and how to keep yourself safe from people doing the wrong thing. In grade 12, we go on to law, governance and changes. So this is really about how a democracy is created and how we create our laws within our country. So it looks at basically how the government might create a law, or how the court systems create a law that then have a huge trickle-on effect from the things that you've learned in previous years. And then we end with a really great human right focus, looking at what people's rights are on a global scale, and then how we as Australia interact with other countries when it comes to laws being broken and protecting people's human rights, which in our current climate with everything that's going on is a really, really great topic to look at, to really understand how people around the world are affected and how Australia can actually help out on a legal front. And to just conclude, guys, I just want to give you some ideas of what kind of career options you could be involved in. So obviously, guys, we've definitely got our law, but also other things that you can be involved in that aren't actually within the criminal system: journalism, education, insurance, business, all those sort of things. Having an understanding of the legal system is really, really will give you kind of a heads up when it comes to getting a job, because you know what you are and are not allowed to do, because every job has legal components to it, with what you're allowed to do, how many sick days you're allowed to have, what contracts you're allowed to enter into, what your employees are and are not allowed to allow you to do, and all those sorts of things. So it's really, really great to have that clear understanding, and it really opens your pathways. Plus, what I love about this is it really encourages you to be critical thinkers, and really encourages you to ask why things happen and how you feel about it on both a social but also a moral level. So if any of that kind of stuff really interests you, then please pick legal studies. It's an awesome subject. I love teaching it. Sometimes I give lollies, so if that is a reason, but it's a great subject, guys. So hopefully a couple of you choose it.
Hi Year 10s, I'm Emmy Collins and I am a geography teacher and tourism teacher at Wellington Point State High School and teach these subjects in the senior and junior areas. So geography is looking at how students can become informed citizens and make judgments about their planet, and that can be within the natural environments or within the human environments, and we look at a variety of different issues on different scales. So this could be in your local backyard, it could stretch out in terms of national issues, all the way up to global issues that are happening around the world. And as I said before, looking at that physical versus human, it's the people versus the natural environment. You get to understand a little bit more about place and space, natural disasters. We study about animal and plant populations, erosions, and many different other aspects within our physical geography realm. Moving on to more about human and people geography, some of the topics and issues we look at include the built environment, population, climate change, overpopulation, and one of the biggest issues is looking at just the sustainability of the planet and applying that criteria to it. In geography, over the 2-year course, we study 4 units, and within that there are 8 topics. So in Unit 1, we're looking at responding to risk and vulnerability and hazard zones, and this looks at the natural hazards and ecological hazards. We then move into Unit 2, which is about planning sustainable places, and this can be responding to the challenges that facing a place in, say, Australia on a national level, all the way up to a global level in terms of the mega cities. In Year 12 and Unit 3, we start looking at responding to land cover transformations. So within Topic 5, we look at land cover transformations and include an element of climate change. And then we move on to looking at it on a local level in terms of land cover. In Unit 4, it moves more to around geography around humans and human development, where we study about people, power and authority. So in Topic 7, it looks at population challenges in Australia. And in Topic 8, we move out again on a global scale and look at population change and all the issues that come with that. There are many careers and job opportunities from studying geography at a senior level, and from the list you can see they can include urban design and planning, from a journalism approach in terms of writing and reporting about the issues that are happening around the world, from education approach in terms of teaching at a school level or at a TAFE or university level. If you're looking at working in the mining industry, understanding our earth and its many layers and how it operates would be important. Agriculture, farming, geology, just understanding our planet and how it works. The tourism industry is a massive part that looks at geography as an element and how we travel around the earth, our impacts on the earth when we travel and so forth. So these are just a short list to give you a bit of an idea, but there are so many opportunities to find a good career from studying geography. So tourism is an applied subject, so if you're not heading towards that university route, this is a great subject to do. It's more hands-on, it's more fun, it's more practical in terms of the skills that you develop. The tourism industry currently has over 1 million people working within work that's either directly or indirectly related to its industry, that obviously dabbles into the hospitality and the guest services industry as well. And the skills that students obtain from studying tourism is a variety of intellectual, technical, operational, and workplace skills. And it enables you as a student to gain an understanding of the role of the tourism industry and its structure, its scope, how it operates. And some of the themes in which we look at include hotels, resorts, so in terms of accommodations, the attractions, these including theme parks, the forms of tourism, the types of tourism, and we also bring in that natural element and sustainability to understand our planet. If you love excursions and you love going out to explore, we currently run 2 to 3 excursions in the tourism subject and over the course. 2 of them in Year 11, where we go to Stradbroke Island and then to Dreamworld. And in the Year 12 program, we have a variety of different options, and one including going to the airport to look at the international travel and domestic travel elements. In the tourism program, we study 7 modules. In year 11, we study modules 1 to 4, and you can see from the slides, we look at Introduction to Tourism, where we touch on all the major aspects of each of those modules, the 7 modules, to give us a bit of a taste tester of what's to come. And then we can apply them to the modules as we go. So after our Introduction to Tourism, we move to Tourism in the local area, where our focus is on Stradbroke Island within the Redlands. That's where we go on our excursion. Module 3 is looking at marketing in tourism and the goods and services, how they're marketed, advertised to get to that target market, the traveller. In Module 4, we move on to looking at theme parks and attractions, where they're located, how they operate, why they operate, and the sustainability behind them. And this is where we go to Dreamworld, and tricked you there. We go to Dreamworld and look at the sustainable elements of running a park. In Module 5, employment in the tourism industry is a great module to complete an application for a job, and you complete a resume where you apply for a mock job and learn the skills of how to write a resume and how to prepare for a job interview. In Module 6, we start to bring in the skills of how to work in customer service and to meet the needs of tourists in hospitality industries, within tourism industries. And in Module 7, we move into more of a global type of tourism, where we look at world travel and understand locations around the world, what they have to offer, how to get there, how to be safe, and how to basically be an international traveller. As I mentioned before, there are over 1 million jobs, indirectly and directly, within the tourism industry that Australians hold. And each of these jobs can vary very differently and lapse into different sectors within the industries that we currently have here in Australia. And if you look at the list, they can be quite broad in terms of retail, working within tourism areas, or in terms of the actual products that are being sold. Travel agencies, this could include planning jobs and working at, within companies like Flight Centre. Tourism management, a flight attendant, in terms of working within the aviation industry, pilots working at airports in terms of check-in and security. Hospitality industry is a massive industry, and you can see how we can often mix with that industry in terms of restaurants, accommodation, and meeting the needs of travellers. Customs officer, having Brisbane Airport, domestic and international, so close to us, opens up lots of jobs there. And even just down to a tour guide within your local area in terms of all the beautiful places we have to showcase here in Australia. There are heaps of opportunities for a career and job if you study tourism.
Hi Year 11s, Mrs. Carr again here to talk to you about social and community studies. I also have the pleasure of teaching this subject, and I absolutely love teaching this subject because it's all about you, and it's all about how you perceive the world and what you see within the world, how society interacts, the role that you play, the role society plays in creating the person that you are. It's all about looking at different cultures and looking at different social issues. It's about managing coping devices and ways to really interact with the world. It looks at current social issues, economic issues. We look at gender issues. Absolutely fantastic subject if you're really interested in the world around you and you're really interested in interaction and why people interact in certain ways and how they interact. In social and community studies, we break it down into 7 modules. So first of all, we begin by looking at relationships and personality. So who you are as a person and how that impacts the relationships you have, from your family to your friends to your teachers to your bosses to all those sorts of things. Then we go into gender and identity and how males and females interact. This isn't looking at gender and transgender and all those kind of components. It's actually looking at how women and men are treated around the world and how what is expected of them in fact contributes to who they are. We then look at Australian society, and in particular how Australian society is portrayed in the media. This is a great one where we watch a lot of Australian movies and a lot of Australian TV shows and talk about if this is a real representation of what Australia is. And then we have our changing world. So we're looking at how the world has changed over the years because of the impacts of different events and things like that. In grade 12, it has more of a into society, preparing you for work kind of focus. We look at out into the world and what kind of skills you'll need to actually be successful in the world. We look at more of an arts component and how different forms of art are used within society to portray personality and relationships. And then finally, we end with a focus on the laws and what laws actually impact you and preparing you for when you leave school from a legal point of view. Now, when it comes to this subject, it's a little bit different to some of your humanities subjects. You'll be asked to do things that you might not have done before, and obviously because many of you, well, none of you would have had any taste of social and community studies, you won't really know the kind of assessment, but there are normal things like exams and reports. But there are also presentations that are required, group projects, skill observations, you have to have interviews, you have to create things, you have to assess your own work, all those sorts of things. Now, because obviously we've never done this subject before, you might be asking, well, why would I want to do it? Basically, guys, if you enjoy humanities, if you have liked it before, but you're concerned about, your ability to continue the academic rigor of the other subjects, this is a great one. If you're passing English, is really, really important that you're doing it because there is a written component of it. The topics are interesting to you. If you're interested in the world and how people interact with each other and want to understand a little bit more about that, this is a really, really great subject. And fundamentally, if you care about what's going on in the world and you want to develop your empathy skills and really understand what's going on in the world, not just what the media shows you, then this is a great subject for you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this presentation on senior humanities and all of the different subjects that we actually offer. We're so proud of our 6 senior subject offerings at Wellington Point High. A final word on a couple of things we love doing as well. Aside just from providing our students opportunities within the classroom, not only to learn, but just really have a great time in our classrooms and lots of fun, we are passionate as well about things like excursions. I mentioned before, or Miss Collins, I think, mentioned before about tourism excursions that are run. Really exciting tourism excursions. We also are passionate about international excursions, and the principal, Dr. Burton Ree, and I have been talking about in the future, within the next couple of years, doing an international excursion to Europe for our senior humanities students that's focused on ancient and modern history. I would absolutely love being able to take you guys overseas. I've done numerous excursions overseas before to Europe and China, but I very much want to do an ancient and modern history themed excursion to Germany, Poland, Italy, and Greece to look at things like the remains of Nazi German concentration camps and a range of museums in Europe, and then to be able to go to Italy to see the Colosseum in Rome and Pompeii, and then and through to Greece as well. These are things I would love to do, and we are focusing in on doing that excursion within the next couple of years, so when you are in senior school. So make sure to choose a senior humanities subject to be eligible to go on Wellington Point High's senior international excursion to Europe. Anyway, this is Mr. Bull signing off. Thank you very much for listening to our talk, and we look forward to seeing you in humanities subjects in 2021.